welcome everyone. Tiki Tuesday Talks back again. We got a big crew here. What's going on, Shannon?
Yeah, I'm hanging out in Brooklyn. It's beautiful outside. It's sunny. I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's good to be back with you guys today.
Nice. Good to have you back, or not. Okay, let's hope we get her back soon. Monique, what's going on?
Hey, everybody. How good? Jersey, same thing. Obviously, we're sharing the same weather with New York. And yeah, I'm stuck and I'm good and I'm ready to get out. And great to see everybody. So yeah, I'm happy. Today is a good day.
Right on. Kat, how's Pittsburgh? What's going on?
Pittsburgh is wonderful. It's unseasonably beautiful. There are beautiful sunny skies, and we have bar seats back now in PA, so that's fantastic.
Very good. Glad to hear it. Aaron, you're on the road. No plants?
No plants. No plants today.
Looks like you're
I'm getting ready to be on a boat here in a little bit. So.
Look at you. Wow, that's tough. That's tough. That feels appropriate to do this from a boat. Steva, you got a plane? You got the Caribbean?
Yeah, well, I'm just imagining that I'm at the Caribbean hotel since I can't be like Aaron and just be on a boat. Just
I like how you upgraded
out here wilding.
It's now a hotel.
Well, you know, we're fancy.
Shannon, we got you back, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe.
What happened there? Here.
Well, you're kind of choppy.
Now we got the freeze.
Now we got the freeze.
That's what happens when you go to talking about.
Talking tropical. Well, this is the first.
Tropical. You get the yes.
I think I have a solution here.
Okay, what's the solution? Maybe we should do phone. How do you feel about phone?
Bear with me.
All right. I'm going to tell everybody about the session while you do that, and we'll hope that we're in a better spot. So we'll see you guys in a little bit. All right, here we go. Let's talk what we're doing today. So Shannon, author, spirits educator, consultant, will be talking classic tropical cocktail builds, contemporary ingredients, and techniques. As usual, we welcome everybody from Facebook, Zavi, YouTube, and the like. Thanks for joining us. Chat box questions, please hit us up. We'll filter them through to Shannon as we get that sorted out. Please do share the event. We appreciate that much. Presentation 30 to 40. Cocktail session kind of within that. And then we'll bring Kat back for 5 questions. So a little background on Shannon. A lot to talk about. So spirits educator, cocktail consultant, expert on the topic of rum and cane spirits. 2014, she became the beverage director of Gladys Caribbean in Brooklyn, has poured cocktails in settings ranging from neighborhood pubs to Michelin star restaurants. In addition to working with a number of spirit brands across a range of categories, she's one of the founding members of Women Leading Rum, an organization dedicated to providing education and professional development for industry and trade professionals. 2018, she launched Women Who Tiki, a tropical-centric pop-up that gathers a team of women bartenders to share their talents and collaborate. Shannon's writing, cocktail recipes, and opinions have been featured in Thrillist, Punch.com, GQ, Liquor.com, New York Magazine, and more. She's been a panelist at BCB, Tiki Oasis, NY Rum Fest, of course, Tiki by the Sea. She is named Imbibes 75 People to Watch. And obviously, we're going to talk about her book as well. So let's go back here. How we looking? Shannon, can you hear us?
All right. I think we have overcome these technical difficulties. These Bermuda.
Well, we can definitely hear you. We can mostly see you, so I'll take it.
Right on. Pete, thanks for that lovely introduction. I always love to let people know that the reason why I got into Tiki was via Tiki by the Sea. So I was able to attend the first session in Wildwood, which was such a, I don't know, over the top experience. And it was really formative for me. I had opened Gladys Caribbean the year before. I was serving mostly kind of traditional Cuban and island style drinks to keep with the theme of the restaurant. And Tiki was not really on my radar. I did have a Mai Tai on the menu because I was fascinated with putting those blends of rums together and presenting it. But going to Tiki by the Sea, meeting Brother Cleve, tasting all those rums and learning about the history convinced me that given what I had at the bar at Gladys, I needed to start serving tiki drinks in this part of Brooklyn because there wasn't really much going on at that time. And so I just want to thank you again for starting Tiki by the Sea and having me here again today.
Well, it's awesome to have you. So glad we were able to influence it. You far transcended our little tiki event since. But, you know, always excited to talk to you, hear what's going on, see what the latest is on, you know, both the kind of forward-thinking bar world, but also the consumer level. And Monique, excited to have you back as well. I think you're going to input some nuggets of wisdom for us from an Appleton perspective.
Oh yeah. I'm glad to be here, especially with Shannon. We've done some sessions, you know, over the last couple months. Shannon has graced us with her presence, and this is going to be fun. Like Shannon, I'm so excited to see what you're going to do today because you got Appleton in there, Ray in there. Like I just can't wait to see. So I'm here as your wing woman today.
Well, I love it because these cocktails will send you flying off to new heights, and we're going to keep it classy in the Choco Cocktail tradition, but also show you some background and heritage and what a Choco Cocktail consists of, as well as the potential and opportunity it gives bartenders of today to innovate and create fun drinks that really appeal to the palate of their guests right now. So thanks
and I definitely want to thank you for including the aspect of Jamaican premium rum. I think the Jamaican category of rum is long-standing in terms of tropical presentation. When you think about a lot of the classic cocktails that you're going to talk about today, I mean, you think Jamaican rum with these cocktails. And so I really think, especially brands like Appleton and Ray and Nephew, Appleton has a long heritage, and that plays into the balance and the mixability and the way that tropical cocktails can be elevated. And so I think you've chosen some great expressions today. And like I said, I'm just going to sit back, play some wing woman, and ask you a couple questions along the way, if you don't mind.
Throw them at me. I'm ready.
All right. So we got your deck up here, Shannon. Just let me know how you want to move through it. We're getting you intermittently, but we can hear you. So the nuggets of wisdom will come through, even if the internet is not cooperating as much. We did have somebody ask already, are we doing frozen drinks today?
Ooh.
Good one.
We're not doing frozen drinks. We're going to be focusing pretty spare, minimalist type of recipe templates, but they can be adapted to frozen if you're so inclined. In fact, the last cocktail we're going to get into, which I've never done frozen, and I'm asking myself why, would probably be an excellent option for that, and we can get into that a little bit later. So before we dive in, I just want to break down what I plan to cover here today so you can kind of orient yourself into what, you know, where my head is at and what you're going to get out of this. So lately, there's been this reevaluation of what tiki is. You've seen people talking about proto-tiki and apera-tiki and tropical cocktails. And there is some convergence amongst these genres, A. And then B, I think there's a lot of interest on the part of the bartender and the consumer to discover ways to give the kid like escapism and expression that isn't linked to culture and that doesn't come across as exploitative or insensitive. So with Choco Cocktails, you have a wonderful opportunity to not only revisit the roots of the templates that eventually inspired what we now call Tiki retroactively. Those cocktails were initially called exotic drinks, things along those lines. And really get into two key elements what we're going to unpack. The fundamentals of Caribbean, South American drink traditions around cane spirits and how those express in local homes. And then how that parlayed into templates that were easy enough to make that almost any bar could do them, but also had a little bit of je ne sais quoi that would make them kind of like destination drinks that were evocative of being on vacation. So we'll
I love the term destination drinks. I'm going to
Yeah.
start.
drinks, they call them boat drinks. But the whole idea that you're getting at is like, I feel like I'm somewhere nice. I'm on a resort. Like that's what
Right.
tropical drinks bring up. Whereas tiki drinks are more specific to a region of the world, namely Oceania and Polynesia. But the goal is the same, right? I just want to chill and be somewhere nice with palm trees and pineapples and things of that nature. So before we move forward, I want to talk about my philosophy regarding drink builds and drink creation. I've learned a lot, primarily from Tiki Cocktails because they're maximalist. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but I studied visual art and art history. And I think that experience informs the way I go about building flavors in my drinks. I kind of think of each ingredient as like a color on a palette. And sometimes it's good to kind of put a whole lot of stuff out there. That's what we call additive approach in sculpture primarily. And then there's the reductive method where you have a lot of stuff to start off with, and then you kind of whittle away and get down to the core and essence. So let's start off with my 4 principles of creativity. I'm going to break it up into 2 stages, so to speak. And this will help you to understand the cocktails I'm going to show you later and how I arrived at how to take that classic idea to my contemporary interpretation. Okay, first off, nothing is new, and that's okay. Actually, it comes as a relief. Okay, so there's been, at least in the realm of American cocktails, a good 400 years of developments from bringing rum and cane spirits into the Americas, from punches to the golden age of American cocktails, the incorporation of aromatized wines, vermouths, bitter, aperitivo, the introduction of tools like shakers, the introduction of ice. Classics are classics for a reason. They work in terms of proportion, in terms of balance, in terms of flavor profile. Granted, you can't pick up any old classic cocktail book and just recreate the recipe and expect it to work for you right now because palates have changed. So I'm not saying that you should just blindly follow a classic and believe that that's going to work per se. But the fact that it's in print and the fact that some of these recipes, and I'm talking about the old fashioned, the martini, the Manhattan primarily, mint julep, things like that, they work because they just focus on sweet, sour, bitter, things of that nature.
I think that's a really good point that most people kind of miss, is that looking at something that was written over 100 years ago and assuming ingredients are the same, they deliver the same, you can simply replicate it and it's going to be perfectly balanced at this point is kind of absurd, right? So it's always about, I think, taking a template and seeing how it can work for you, right?
Yeah,
and also too, is somebody who's like new to mixology. One of the things that I've always wondered is, how did that come about? Like, how did it get to that sour, that mix? and how did we get to the point where rum just plays into that mix so well? I mean, I've done the research. Shannon, you were really good at educating on that. But how did that evolve into this tropical world now?
Well, the British Navy kind of gets the lion's share of the credit for that via Jamaica. So when the British Navy assumed control of the island in 1756, tell me if I got this number right, Monique, they began to utilize Jamaican rum as a part of their ration. Mind you, this had been taking place before, a little less formally speaking, with Barbados and other holdings in the Caribbean. But bear in mind that at that time, the production in Jamaica was exploding. Like the volume was off the charts. And
Right.
the Navy realized that they were able to, get a liquid that would take up less space, be more potent, be more stable via Jamaica. And so that was the start of the British Navy using that as a ration. And then about 30 years later, they brought in the addition of lime, sometimes sugar, to cut the ration. That's where you get the grog from. And on islands, of course, like people had already been mixing rum, sugar, and lime as a way to kind of soften it and make it more palatable. But the British Navy's grog introduced this idea of mixing the spirit that way to a more global audience via Europe.
Gotcha. So we're looking at the grog updated and progressed.
I mean, it was kind of like the start as far as people who are not from the Caribbean consuming rum and finding a way to make it easy and portable. And then some of the drinks we're going to talk about later kind of build up a template. That was going on like just naturally in the Caribbean and in Latin America, that you would use what I call the what grows together goes together principle. From the British standpoint, it was just a practical way to make sure the sailors were able to get their rum but not go too overboard with it, so to speak. But yes, a natural sweet, sour, and spirit combination that people weren't really dealing with too much at that time.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that being said, next principle that I follow is called wax on, wax off. So I admit, I grew up in the 80s. Not with the number, the age, but I love that movie, The Karate Kid. And yes, it was very cheesy, but one of my main takeaways there was, Danny was really excited to like learn some Cobra Kai techniques and get in there and do these flashy jump kicks. And he spends like a couple months, waxing Mr. Miyagi's car, feeling like, I don't understand. I'm trying to learn karate right now. And so in order to put yourself in a position to have a frame of mind that's going to allow you to understand the classics and to utilize those lessons to make a meaningful play on that classic or innovation or evolution of that classic, you just have to do a lot of repetition. A lot of those basic things over and over again that it seems kind of rote. Like I'm thinking back to when I was running a bar at Flatties, and when I would interview bartenders, I wanted to interview them via make me a daiquiri, make me an old fashioned, make me a Negroni, 3 or 4 classics. I needed to see, A, if they understood the recipe, and if they understood the build, like how are they arranging the ingredients in what order, and how are they executing it? Like, did they understand the impact of the build and execution on the ingredients and what that was going to give you in the end? And I'm a big proponent of, as a bartender, be it at home or professionally, picking 1 or 2 drinks, classics, to obsess over for anywhere between 5 and 10 years, like kind of Shaolin style. Like I worked in a rum Manhattan for 5 years before I even opened up Gladys. I still didn't get it right. But the point is,
that's definitely a wax on, a wax off.
No, yeah, I think I might try it again because back then I was like doing vermouth and Amaro splits, and the selection of different rums and Amaros aren't what they are right now. So I think if I go back, I might be able to get the drink that I wanted. But the point is, being willing to put yourself through those continual paces, like pick a form or a kata, if you will, and just do it over and over and over again, so that you build an intuitive feel for what these ingredients do, and that takes you to the next set of principles.
But Shannon, ideally, in terms of like rum taste profile with the tropical builds that we're looking at today, what are some of the tasting notes or the notes that you look for when it comes to these type of builds?
Yeah, so the builds we're going to be working on really exploit the kind of higher top notes and aromas that come from high esterification that is unique to Jamaican rum. So you're looking at the combination of a longer fermentation, a distillation in a pot, whether you're using molasses or not. Like what you get that's unique to Jamaica is these kind of deep baked flavors of banana, raisins, currant, a little bit of herb that give us this nice range. So the fruit elements definitely appeal to people that like a lighter style of drink or a friendlier style of drink. But then for somebody that say likes whiskey or scotch or longer aged or matured spirits, they're going to get that from the deeper notes of the rum after they blossom in the barrel.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I can attest to that with Appleton. I mean, our range has everything from, the orange peel notes to the, the honey notes, the cocoa, that oakiness from the barrel aging. And so the portfolio definitely can take someone throughout progressing the palate when it comes to drinking rum in tropical cocktails. I mean, a lot of people that drink our rums tend to say, oh, I expected it to be sweet, and they don't get that sweetness, and they get that full bodied, even in the mix. So I agree with you. If I'm looking for a tropical cocktail, I'm looking for something that's definitely, I can taste the natural flavors of the earth, or the ground, or the infusion of those natural flavors that you get. I'm not looking for what people call funky. I'm more so looking for the fruit forward notes to come to the front.
Well, that's the wonderful thing about the Jamaican rum making process, is that it's a bold concentration of flavor. So if you happen to be in the business of being a little more fruit forward and less funky, it's more concentrated. And so when you start to combine that with the other ingredients at play, I like to think that it just kind of amplifies it or puts a loudspeaker up to all the things involved there. And it's, well, we'll see later what that looks like. But yeah, no, that's what I always love about Jamaican rum. I'm a big fan of it. Like, it's actually one of the subcategories within the genre that really kind of got me early on, and I'm a big fan. So with that being said, now we're going to talk about play in the dirt. Okay, so before I said, okay, the classics are everything, wrap your head around them, spend a lot of time practicing them, know them like the back of your hand, be able to do it kind of automatically without thinking. At the same time, you also want to remain open-minded to ideas that, at least on paper or initially, don't look very promising, or even go into a drink R&D session knowing full well that it's not going to work. But you do it so that you gain an understanding of why it doesn't work, so you can avoid that mistake later. Like, I've done R&D sessions with people, and they're like, that sounds like a terrible idea. And I'm like, yes, I think it is, but I want to find out why. And rather than just speculating as to why it's a bad idea, I'm going to try it, and then I'll have some evidence in front of me that I can evaluate and pick apart. So the experience of failure is just as important to success. Like, you need to understand what doesn't work, so that you know what to avoid and maybe, I don't know. I just think it's just good to have as many experiences as possible when you're in this business of drink making. Monique, I don't know if you have anything to say to that, but
I mean, I'll add something to that. I think it's strange how hesitant people are to play around a bit. Once you have, whether you're at home or you're running a bar, I just find it really interesting. I mean, the downside of making something that wasn't balanced is you could either tweak it or, okay, you toss a drink, right? Like,
Right.
it just seems really strange as an idea to not be like, well, let's try it, right? Like, well, maybe you didn't love it. Okay, now you know that, right? But I find people are very hesitant to kind of go outside the boundaries so much, and I think it's odd. It's not a life or death decision here that we're making, right?
I mean, that's just me, but hey, call me a little different. So again, I encourage you to, don't be afraid or hesitant to do something that is not likely going to work. That's okay. You'll learn something anyway. Hopefully, you'll be able to do something with that. And then the last one is where it gets really fun, and we'll see this in the last cocktail. It's what I call the Jedi mind trick. Okay, so I have a style of cocktail that's really personal to me that I call kind of shapeshifter cocktails, where the list of ingredients or the name or the appearance does not set you up for the initial sip, or by extension, the initial sip comes off one way, be it like really floral or aromatic, and then as you kind of like work your way through the progression of the drink, other things begin to emerge. It might become sweeter, it might become drier, or what have you. But the whole point is you think you're going to get one thing and you're happy with that, and then you end up with something else and you're even happier. I've heard it said that, I think I've heard chefs say this, that it's one thing for a guest to like the first bite of a dish, right? But to know that your dish really works, you want them to be even happier with the last bite than they were with the first. Okay, so think about how difficult that is. Doesn't really take place too often. So if you have it in you, or you stumble upon an opportunity to kind of slip a Jedi mind trick in there, that's fun because it's just really fascinating. And, as a bartender, I want you to want more. So I want you to be like, whoa, what just happened? Let me try that again. So now let's get into the meat of it. Choco cocktails, what are they? I touched on this earlier, and from my perspective, Choco cocktails are drinks that were developed primarily to appeal to tourists, but they derive their origins and their builds from drinks that were consumed in the Caribbean or on islands in home settings long before tourism was a thing in these places in question. So I got a few cocktails here. I'll unpack one of these progressions in more detail, but the whole idea here is that you have people basically drinking aguardiente or an unaged rum initially, kind of like in their, I'm using Cuba as an example here, because there's a couple drinks that easily trace back to that area. Then you have Americans and Europeans come into these cultures. We're talking like late 19th century. You start to see the drink kind of evolve a little bit to meet that palate or desire. This idea that you're not just having the rum as a folk remedy, which is the case of El Drac, which is basically the precursor of a mojito. It's aguardiente, which is kind of cachaça, mint and lime, but a canchanchara, which is like a hot toddy, which is rum, honey, and lemon. That's what people are drinking at home. They don't have bar tools, they don't have bar setups. It's like, I need to, fix myself up. Americans come along and are like, oh, how can we make this more appealing to people who are working here right now? The mojito takes the El Drac, mixes it with soda, And then if you go a few decades later, 60 years later, after the mojito becomes popular among Americans, you have the Missionary's Downfall, which is a full-fledged drink that's meant to be the same base mixture, where you have the rum, the mint, the lime, but now we've added some pineapple and some coconut, and it has more of an entertainment value in terms of the presentation and the layers of flavor. So it's important to note that, you know, there's basically 3 periods here, but missing is the Tiki period. So the Tiki period is drinks that are conceived in America and served to Americans. The tropical cocktails are served primarily in the Caribbean. You start to see these appear in the 1940s, 50s, but they really explode in the 1960s as tourism to the Caribbean takes off. And it doesn't make sense, and there were instances of this, it doesn't make sense to bring a tiki bar to the Caribbean, because if people want Polynesia, they can either go to the tiki bar stateside or they can go to Polynesia. So when they come to the Caribbean, they're basically getting hotel versions of tiki drinks that have been somewhat simplified. And you can start to see some other European trends and liqueurs creep in, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Monique, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what was going on in Jamaican tourism industry with drinks like, say, like the Myrtle Bank Punch and the Planters Punch, and how Appleton was playing with all that.
Yeah, and that was, I actually was going to say something as you were talking about that. You know, in Jamaica, like you said, the tourism industry drives a lot of rum consumption, and so you find that on the island, when you go to a hotel or an all-inclusive, you get these cocktails that are just mixed to kind of just get you going, for the lack of a better term. But when you talk to the locals, the consumption is totally different. As far as Appleton, this was really interesting when I first saw this slide. As you see, all of those cocktails call for aged white rum versus aged brown spirit. And so where you get that changeover, like if you back, you know, even now, if you go to any resort in Jamaica, you're getting what used to be Appleton Special, which could be white or brown, depending on the cocktail that's being used. Now you're seeing that transition into the hotels using Signature, because with Signature, you get that minimum aged rum in there is that 4-year span, a little bit upwards towards that 8-year span. You're getting a lot of that orange peel note. It's definitely a lot more well-rounded. And so you have that, you have the consumer that's used to drinking whiskey here in the United States, because primarily the tourism industry is Canadian and US based individuals. So you get this whiskey palate person that's now drinking a rum cocktail. And now you'll find that your people are asking, what's that taste? Because it's not sweet, it's different, it's balanced, it's rounded. And so Appleton Estate Signature is definitely playing in that space now. We got the new edition of the 8-year, and the 8-year goes a little bit more into the elevated because of that taste profile is a little bit more full bodied, and you've got that mark range. But yeah, I mean, brown spirit and brown aged rum, premium rum in Jamaica it's aspirational. So it's gone from just what the locals drink to now what you're drinking at your bar at most of the all-inclusives.
I love it.
Yeah, we're a bit of a key player down there.
I would hope so. But I'm curious, like you did mention that there is a difference between was consumed locally, right? If you live in Jamaica, right? I have a hint here about what that might be.
Oh, if you live
Sugar,
in Jamaica, you're drinking
like,
Ray and Nephew.
But I mean, tell me, the Ray and Tang is pretty big. You know, I recently did a collaboration with Tang and did a Miss Tang cocktail, and that's a pretty typical thing to enjoy in Jamaica. Is that correct or no?
That's a famous cocktail. The Gladys famous. So definitely Miss Ting is a go-to. And then you've also got the Rumpari as well, which is a go-to now in locals in Jamaica. So yeah, I mean, aged rum it's key. It's key for tropical.
Love it. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide, and we're gonna again show this juxtaposition between local consumption and then what happens when you move into a hospitality space that's geared more towards someone that's visiting from outside the island. So on the left, you have a Cantinero at Abegadeto del Medio, which is the famous mojito bar in Havana, Cuba. And you'll notice that his approach to building this mojito is pretty straightforward, right? There's a row of glasses lined up. It's not a fancy procedure. You put the sugar in there, you put the mint, you add the rum, soda, boom, done, right? Now on the right, you'll see a Queen's Park Swizzle, which is from a hotel in Trinidad. It's very popular in the 1930s. And you see drinks that kind of look like this popping at various resorts with or without this name, with different rums put in there. But it just kind of shows that at this point, we move from like, hey, I'm the local, going to my corner spot, and now I'm coming from abroad, and I really need to have my my eyes seduced so that I'm feeling the whole vibe of being here on this vacation. And this to me is like the major distinction between tropical and tiki is that tropical drinks retain the roots of the local area they're at, but they're just a tad more dressed up. Whereas in tiki, the objective was again to focus on a Polynesian set of images, and also they were a bit more ambitious from a kind of flavor build standpoint. Tropical drinks to be a little simpler. Again, we're talking about hotels. We're talking about the way hotels bring their product in, and also the types of people that might be working on those properties. So here it's like right in that middle ground between what a local would consume and then what you might get in the really kind of over the top tiki experience. So on next slide, just a reference to those first three drinks that were on that matrix. This is a condensada, which is essentially a rum hot toddy. You can find variations of this in various cultures, be it in Jamaica, in Cuba, which is this one is from Cuba, or even in Brazil. Very simple. Rum, honey, lemon. That's medicine, traditional. Most of it comes in the traditional ceramic vessel. It's basically recreational now, but back in the day, that's what you got when you were feeling ill.
Yep. I
One secret is that Charleston kind of has some slight Caribbeanisms to it, and I would get like overproof rum with a spoonful of sugar when I had a cold. I was at my grandma's house. Got started young. Okay, so on the next slide, Cox Jennings, who worked with a mining firm in late 19th century Cuba. That recipe on the right side is his first stab at daiquiri, and it's rum, sugar, lime, and soda. So that's when you see that local tradition being adapted by an expat, trying to basically kind of applied what he had known from experiencing cocktails in American bars, adding that Lindner, and they called it a daiquiri. But you'll see next that the drink did evolve when it got into the bar setting. And now you have a figure such as Constantina Rabia Oliveira, who was called the cocktail king of Cuba, began making daiquiris served up. Now, this is something that has been taking place in America for a while. It came down to Cuba during Prohibition. Serving drinks that were geared towards American tourists were, this very profitable proposition. But I gotta go back to this whole wax on, wax off point here in regards to like how can you make something new and exciting from a classic tropical cocktail is do what this guy did. The man worked 40 years behind this bar, kind of crazy. He would squeeze his limes by hand, and he made a habit of regularly experimenting with the daiquiri build. And these experiments range from everything from the addition of a drop of grenadine, or maybe a little bit of orange liqueur, orange curacao, or maraschino, and also the different types of ice that he used to prepare the drink. Like he kind of put it through his paces. He had one version where he would use shaved ice and throw it back and forth between two shakers to chill it that way. And when he was done, all the ice had evaporated and just go straight in the coupe, and it was at perfect temperature. He was one of the first bartenders to utilize a blender, as you see him utilizing here in this picture. In fact, that's a preferred method at La Florida to this day because it's super busy in there and it also works really well. But my point is, tropical cocktails have their basis in very simple trifecta. Sometimes like a fourth thing comes in play, and that fourth thing could be either a minuscule amount of an ingredient or just special attention paid to one aspect of technique. In other words, with tropical cocktails, a little bit can go a long way. All right, so now we're about to get into the cocktails. So do we have any questions at the moment before we dive into these two examples?
Doesn't look like we have any questions. Peter, are you seeing anything?
Nothing specifically yet.
But please,
Okay.
people, ask away. Ask away. This is the time. I mean, we've got Shannon here who's like a plethora of information. So, definitely ask.
Okay, so I got two cocktails to show you. One is based on a stir drink, and the second one is based on a shaken drink. So why am I starting off with a cognac cocktail? Well, A, because I'm a sucker for banana, and B, when I saw this, I said this should actually be made with Jamaican rum. But we got to kind of look at the context of what was going on in the bar world at the time. This comes from the original version comes from the 1937 book, The Café Royale Bar Book. And originally, it's just equal parts cognac and banana liqueur. So for those of you who are familiar with that period,
Wow.
I know it's a lot. It's like it's almost like a tropical stinger. Okay, so stinger is cognac and creme de menthe, and so these were kind of heavier drinks that were more like aperitif. And I wanted to like the original recipe, but it doesn't work for us anymore. And a more contemporary version came out maybe about 5 years ago that involved Amontillado sherry. So instead of half, it's like 1 ounce of the cognac and then 3/4 sherry, 1/4 ounce of banana liqueur. And it does soften it a little bit and make it a little easier to take in terms of that added acidity. But when I looked at it, I was like, it's called Banana Bliss, and I need more banana, right? In the first one, there was too much banana. And then the second one, there wasn't enough banana. And I'm thinking, well, in 1930s, to mix with an aged rum was not a thing as of yet. Aged white rums that have the color filtered out, were the preferred cocktail rum, so that wasn't even on the table for mixologists at the time. And so I'm like, well, now we're in an age where we have products like Appleton where you can mix with an aged rum. So I was like, let's to the feature and see what we can do here. So if you don't mind, let's look at the next slide here and talk about why I selected to do this updated version that I call the Cavendish. The Cavendish is
I love it.
I'm sorry, my dear?
I love it. I love the ingredients and where you're going with this.
Yeah, again, I'm crazy about banana. Every time I'm developing new menus, I kind of have to slap my hand away from it because it's like, it's so easy for me to want to work with it. But when it was time to come up with some cocktails with Appleton and, you know, with your portfolio, I was like, well, the banana element is not something that people play with too often. So I thought, well, let's dig into that. And I thought the most efficient way to get there would be to take Appleton and the Bray and Nephew and basically blend them in a way that you would blend different marks in a cognac house. So for those of you who are familiar with the way cognacs are blended, and this is true within rum as well, not often discussed or compared, is that, you know, you can take different years, different barrel expressions, and then get what you want out of each one to come up with a blend that will give you like a signature style. And Monique, I would love it if you could share with us what's going on in the 8 in terms of how the marks are broken down.
Yeah, so the 8, this beauty here, it is our newest addition to the portfolio. It's an update to the Appleton Estate Reserve. So for those of you who are familiar with the Reserve definitely was a lovely addition to our portfolio. It's actually the first expression that our master blender, Dr. Joyce Spence, created after she became master blender. But the 8-year Reserve, basically what we did is we updated and we created this liquid that highlights the marks a bit more. So in this, you've got minimum aged rum. The youngest drop is 8 years old, but this is a range where you can find the range goes from 8 all the way to 12. And the notes in this are more prominent. So what happens is because you've got that, there's less mark, so less heads, less tails, and in this particular range, in this expression, you now have those honey notes coming through. You've got the spicy fruit coming through. And in spice is associated with cinnamon, nutmeg, pimento, those type of spices versus that hot, what you consider hot spice. And then you've got that vanilla that's coming through. And of course, what's synonymous with the brand throughout our expression, the orange peel notes. And then you've got that oakiness that's just rounding out the balance of the 8-year Reserve. So I definitely think where you're going with this, Shannon, with the range that's within the 8, the banana and the molasses in the Ray and Nephew, along with the other ingredients that you have there, that is just a full-on rum experience. And I love where you're going with the Cavendish. So that's a bit about the 8. For anybody who hasn't tasted it yet, definitely you got to try this one.
Yeah, again, I love that you pointed out the baking spices here because I think the baking spices were something that people might have been initially seeking in that 1930s recipe. It's kind of dessert, but here's more the strain. And what I did was to basically make a clarified punch. So I'm going to revisit the 8 right now. Yeah, I get, you know, the candied banana, the baking spice, which I think is an excellent for, you know, a clarified punch style drink. So to make life easy for everyone here, you got the ingredients there. I think you got the build for the punch in the newsletter, so you can look at that later if you like. I just put this in bottle because I'm living an easy life today.
So would you always, in a recipe like this, would it be good to say that this is definitely a nomination for batch cocktails, large format or batch style?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, because in the original iteration, like you could easily bottle that. That just wasn't a thing at the time. And so I wanted to keep it like in the same spirit of that original cocktail in terms of what it was going after, like something that was, on a fuller body side, had some banana notes, had some fruit, but just add some acidity that I thought would do it more justice ultimately for what is more today. And yes, it should be batched out. It could go into a bottle. I have a little mini right here, but you could easily make a liter, take it to your next gathering, and then, bring some banana leaves, pour it over a rock, and you're good to go.
Love it. I should have had my sample here, Shannon.
My bad. So, again, the idea here is that I was looking at the banana bliss and I was like, it sounds nice, but I'm not feeling the bliss. It just feels too sweet. And so I wanted to kind of bring in more of that Jamaica element that would give you those banana notes in the nose, as well as on the palate, and just a little bit of zip to it to make it a little easier to take down.
Yeah.
Got a question here. Where do you source banana leaves? Where can somebody at home find those?
Yeah, so I live in Crown Heights, so I'm able to go to the little Caribbean area called Flatbush, Asian markets.
We can hear Crown Heights in the background.
Yes.
Always delivers, New York.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I can get it easily where I'm at, but if you don't have Caribbean markets in your area, an Asian market might have banana leaves. You might be able to look online because I've noticed there's a few kind of specialty grocers that do deliveries popping up, but I would say Caribbean market, if you can get to that, Asian market, and to some degree, Latin markets or Mexican markets might have banana leaves as well. Do you guys see the package? All right, let me show you. And now that I should have had it out there before, but now that I'm looking at it, this brand, Lefay, is something that you might want to look into for other products that I'm going to mention in the seminar or for Choco Cocktails in general. Like things like Soursop, Waba, different purees. You can get Lefay, you can get frozen, things like that, very helpful. So that's a brand I use.
And what a lot of people don't realize about the Soursop is the Soursop tastes like a combination of fruits. So when you Soursop, you taste pineapple, you taste citrus, you taste banana, you taste all of that in the Soursop. Soursop is one of my favorite Caribbean fruit. And depending on where you get your Soursop, depending on which island you get your Soursop from, it has a different taste too, based on the soil content of that particular island. And a lot of people, you can't compare the Soursop from in Jamaica to the Soursop in Barbados or Trinidad. It's totally different tastes. Same thing with the apples, same thing with oranges, totally different taste.
Well,
I also got some info from our team. Restaurant Depot or restaurant stores would carry banana leaves too, in case people.
Nice.
One other question here, Shannon, is wouldn't the half and half curdle by the lime juice?
So if you look at the newsletter, it's a clarification protocol that you'll see in various books. So you're heating up the milk and adding everything else cold, and it will curdle. And then subsequently, you're going to strain it through cheesecloth and wire baskets a couple times to get those curds out. The whole point of using the milk heated and then having it come in contact with the acid is that you get the solid parts separate, and then you have the whey, or that kind of silky element that comes from the dairy that produces that clear color.
I love
Yeah.
the clarified punch application. Love it. It just
Yeah.
adds a different type of texture.
And if anybody's wondering, we have a newsletter. Hit us up. We'll add you to it. We'll send that info out to you if you're looking for it. All right.
Monica, bring up the Soursop. We'll go, you already broke it down, so I don't need to talk about it too much, but I'm shocked that it hasn't made its way into more cocktails.
I know.
See if I'm crazy, but the thing that really drew me to it was that it has that kind of like a really nice floral note in the nose. It kind of smells like a pineapple, tastes like an apple, tastes like a pear, finishes really dry. I was just like, it's like the stuff that every cocktail person wants to work with, because it has your beginning, middle, and end. Like it can accompany every part of the cocktail journey. And I'm like, why aren't we using this? Anyway, so that's the segue into the next drink. So now we're going to talk about Jungle Bird. And I'm really excited to talk about this because it feels like this drink is everywhere and yet not everywhere. Okay, so it feels like it's really easy to order one. I don't really see it on a lot of menus. I see a good amount of riffs. I see a lot of references. It's interesting to me. But the reason why I brought this one up is that I see this as a cocktail that basically kind of opened the door for people in the craft cocktail world, and we're talking the mid-2000s, to start to take rum cocktails seriously again, and to start to take tropical cocktails as something that they could easily serve to guests of any stripe, regardless of the concept. So, a little bit of background here. This drink appeared 1978, 1979 at the Kuala Lumpur Hilton, and it was basically one of the last tropical cocktails that got written down. Because at that point, cocktail culture in general, tiki was definitely on its last leg. Disco was reigning supreme, and people had other things that they enjoyed to recreate with, and cocktails were not really high on the list. We don't know who the bar manager was at the time. We don't know who invented it, but thankfully somebody was able to figure this out and bring it back. His name is Giuseppe Gonzalez. He's currently based in Las Vegas. And
there you go. Pride of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Yep. I wish I was there.
All right. We're hanging out. We're opening up. Weather's good.
Yeah.
It's a good time to come.
So Giuseppe, I think he's built a reputation for having worked in some of the best bars in New York at a time when craft cocktail culture was coming back, but also kind of having his own edge. And I love him for that. And I think the fact that they had the foresight to select this drink out of the ether and put it on the menu at PKNY was brilliant. As a little bit of background, Mr. Gonzalez grew up in New York, also spent some time in Puerto Rico, where his family's from, so he's a New Yorican. And without having spoken to him about this, I'm maybe making the assumption that, his cultural background meant that he was a little more open to rum drinks than maybe his contemporaries at the time. And by his contemporaries, I'm talking about people he worked with when he was at Flatiron Lounge, later at Peggy Club, and then at Dutch Hills, where he got himself into a position where he was able to be a partner at PKNY, which was one of the first kind of bubblings up of tiki cocktails coming back to the craft scene. I want to say this is like 2003, 2005 when that bar opened. Forgive me if I'm a little foggy. But there was like this flurry of things going on. There was PKNY, there was Lang Kai, which was Julie Reiner's Hawaiian concept that opened and closed within a 2-year period. There was a Hurricane Club that was in Gramercy Flatiron. So people were kind of inching their way back, but they were a little bit ahead of their time. But this drink managed to hold on. So it had the original recipe is Jamaican rum. He used a St. Croix rum, but I put the Jamaican rum back where it belonged. Campari, pineapple juice, demerara syrup, and lime. And I think that what really helped this drink to endure in this stage was that it wasn't too sweet. It had a boldness to it. And then as time went on, especially we get into the early 2010s, and people were into bitters and Amari and Placebo, they're like, oh, I see Campari in there. I can rock with that. And so again, Campari, local drinking habit, this cocktail kind of like takes it and runs with it and kind of thrusts it onto the world stage.
Ooh.
So this drink, I don't know. I didn't have like a grand scheme when I came up with it, but I just kind of followed my gut. I was asked to come up with a cocktail that was inspired by a reggae song, and I really liked Starlighting. I thought it was a really fun, catchy, laid-back song. It's by Horace Mann, and tempo's dope. So I was like, oh, it's a bird song. I was like, okay, let's do a jungle bird. Meanwhile, I really enjoyed my unaged, overproof Jamaica rums. And so I was like, let's start with that. And I was like, okay, well, what would be kind of like the opposite of a Campari? So I chose a gentian Alpine liqueur. And then from there, I was like, well, I could use pineapple, but I want to kind of move it a little further in this kind of like lighter direction. So I chose Soursop and lime. The proportions are more or less the same. I had to dial back a little bit. So it's 1.5 ounces of Puree and 3/4 ounces of the gentian liqueur. I use Suze in this case, but you can tinker around with other ones. I prefer Suze. I like the golden color. And then for the Soursop, again, 3/4 ounces, and for lime, 3/4 ounces.
And Shannon, how did you treat the Soursop in this application? Because Soursop has that real creamy texture. How did you treat it in terms of including it in the cocktail?
Yeah, so the bottle I'm showing you right now, this is frozen Leffe puree that I cut down with water per the instructions in the back of the package, and then I put it through a blender to kind of like even it out. And then I went ahead and built the cocktail in this little bottle here. Leffe is one source, so depending on what you're getting, again, it tends to be a little hard to work with. Hence, maybe why it's not in a lot of bars. But I would say if you're doing like Perfect Puree or Pack Rim or Leffe, experiment with the one that you like the most. In some cases, you might want to not just do like an equal split of water and puree. You might want to do 1 part puree and half a part sugar syrup or half a part water, and kind of give it the consistency you want, especially when we're talking about, blended drinks. This could probably be a good drink, in which case you're going to treat the Soursop a little differently.
Gotcha.
But yeah, this is a really fun surprise because, you look at overproof rum and you think it's going to be kind of like knocking you over in the face. But again, the floral notes that come from the Brain Nephew come to the fore. They're further amplified by the Soursop. It's very dry at the end. So there's nothing sweet about it at all, but it's very fruity, which is typically people think those things overlap. Fruity means sweet, but in this case, not at all.
Love it.
Looks great.
Alpine gentian liquor, that's funky.
Yeah, we had a question here. I think you answered it. Is it better to work with fresh fruit or store-bought puree in terms of consistency of flavor, et cetera?
Yeah, okay. So if you're at home, fresh fruit, if you have the equipment to break it down, and by all means do that. If you're working in a bar, purees are going to be more consistent and cost effective.
Got it. If you're making a number of them, keep it consistent. If you're playing around at home and got the time, go for it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Cool. So thank you so much, Shannon. I'll put up your info here for everybody in case people want to get in touch. Always rad to see you and hear your voice and hear what this is all about. Oh, I got another question before we go on that. What's the season for Soursop? Maybe that's to both of you guys.
Ooh. So seasonal soursop, like fresh soursop, if you're going to get it from the islands, I would say probably like June to October.
Got it. Awesome. So coming up, timely session. Very cool. Very cool. Stick with us a moment. We're going to bring Kat back for 5 questions and we'll say goodbye. So see you guys in a moment. Hi, Kat. Thanks for being patient.
Yeah. Hi, guys. No, that was awesome. Soursop is one of my favorite ingredients to play around with.
It's very good. I haven't done much with it, but now I'm inspired.
Yeah, it's a great.
For sure. All right. We got 5 questions for you.
All right.
Favorite Tiki by the Sea memory?
Favorite Tiki by the Sea memory? The amusement park. Like, I love roller coasters. And be on the boardwalk, like night riding is my jam. I don't know, you guys probably know this about me, but like Jersey is my spirit animal. And so I love being in Jersey and Wildwood. I only lived in Jersey for 13 months, but I really, truly identify with it. And so like just being in the Jersey air on like roller coasters at night was like my favorite thing in the world.
That's awesome. I definitely spent more than 13 months in Jersey. I feel the spirit. Feel the spirit. I like how you said Night Rider too. That's also a nice reference to a great 80s show.
Oh yeah.
All right. Describe South Jersey.
South Jersey is underappreciated, truly. They have like all of Jersey, I feel like, is underappreciated, but especially South Jersey, like they get such a bad rap being down there. But it has all the perks of wherever you want to go. It's like pretty frequently the most closest you can be to the beach as well as like a major city. You got Philly right there, you got the beach. But yeah, I think it's an unappreciated gem.
There you go. Get you working for the tourism board. I feel like you're ready to go. All right. Weirdest Wildwood experience.
Love it.
What's that?
Don't get me started on Jersey. I love it.
All right. Weirdest Wildwood experience. Weirdest.
I don't know if it was like weird. So I had a very unconventional, I'm sure Steve remembers this, entrance into Wildwood. So I had like this, or into Tiki by the Sea.
Aaron's nodding. I'm gonna get him in.
Yeah, Aaron Joseph was there. So I had just come back from Camp Run Amok. I had like 5 days and went right to Tiki by the Sea. So I was like trying to work as much as possible. I got on a red-eye bus, like from Pittsburgh to go to New York. And I woke up at 3:00 in the morning with the bus heading back to Pittsburgh. Like because there was like a closure on the turnpike.
Wow.
And the driver couldn't reach anybody, so he couldn't get permission to go on roads that like they don't have approval for. So I just like woke up and I'm like going back to Pittsburgh. I was like, well, I'm like texting Steve, I was like, I'm not going to make it. I have like no idea how I'm going to get to New York. She's like, well, can you get to Philly? I was like, sure. So like I like ended up like I was able to catch a megabus. Like if I was even like 5 minutes late back to Pittsburgh, I would have missed a megabus that would have got me to Philly on time. Aaron Joseph drove up from Wildwood to Philadelphia and then drove me back in insane rush hour traffic.
That's a good friend. There you go.
Yeah, well, but we got Wawa. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, Aaron and I will make anything happen.
Yeah. But so I missed like the first, like, I don't know, 8 hours of Tiki by the Sea, but I definitely had the most ridiculous entrance to it.
Wow. I've never heard of a bus turning around. That's
Oh yeah, no, like I woke up and it was literally going the opposite. Well, I've lived in Philly, I lived in Pittsburgh, I've lived in New York and Jersey. I like know that route so well. And I was like, why do I still see sheet stations? This is confusing. I should not be on this side of the state. And like turns out I like slept through the whole thing.
Nice.
But yeah, we are on our way back to Pittsburgh.
All right. Favorite cocktail that you had at Tiki by the Sea?
Ooh. I don't know. There was so many cocktails. It was my first time trying a guava when I was there.
Oh, nice.
So that was like really incredible. So Pennsylvania, as many of you know, is a control state. We have very limited access to a lot of delicious things. So I'd only ever had P2 and LeBlanc Gazasha before.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So like the fact that like product exists and that there were so many iterations, like I felt like a kid on Christmas. The person next to me thought I was crazy. They were from New York, and I was like, "What is this?" They're like, "Yeah, this is." I don't know why you're freaking out right now. It's like, well, I only ever had P2, and like that's what this tastes like.
Well, yeah, there you go. Tell us about what you're up to with Mindful Hospitality and all things.
Yeah, so Mindful Hospitality Group is a bar consulting education events company based in Pittsburgh. So we help people around the city either open up bar programs or like go into places that already exist and kind of like help them like do things that they're not necessarily great at. Like we'll help them like actually produce an inventory system or design a cocktail menu for them. We do staffings, trainings, hirings, things of that nature, kind of like whatever most people like what they most need. And then we also do a lot of private events. So anything from like doing the bars for fundraisers, weddings, obviously in COVID, those stopped happening. But one thing that like kind of took off that is like our favorite thing to do was like home bartending classes. We started doing them, like someone just asked us if we would do it for like a Christmas present. And now it's like the thing we've done the most. And it's cool because we've been able to do that virtually still all during the pandemic. So we do them for like private people, but also like we've had national organizations and like charity foundations like reach out to like have us come do cocktail kits and demos for like their virtual galas or their holiday Christmas party, things like that. And then we decided we're so bored, why don't we open our own bar in the middle of a pandemic? So then we did that.
Awesome.
That's the short of it.
Very cool. Well, good luck to you on that. Steve, what did I miss?
Well, I just want to say, please, Kat, give our love to Cecil.
I will. He's sorry he couldn't be here today. He's at one of our other projects right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss Pittsburgh, and
Pittsburgh misses you.
It's my jam. I love Pittsburgh. Also a steel city. So
I know.
like a sister city to Birmingham.
Well, I know. And like Birmingham was on my list in 2020. So now it's just going to have to be 2021.
It's got that steel connection,
People together.
People together.
Also, there are more women bartenders in Pittsburgh than men, I feel like. So
there are. 100%.
That makes Pittsburgh my jam. Yeah.
Right. No. Like
it's like women strong up there.
For the last 3 years, our entire USBG council has been completely women.
Nice.
But yeah, all the lady love.
Yeah, hell yeah. Pete, tell us about what the next session is going to be.
Let's do that. This session is going to be amazing. So it's actually on a Thursday, May 6th, only because this is when we can get all these brilliant minds into the same digital room. So we're going to have Dave Wondrich, Paul McFadden, Paul McGee, Jeff Beachbum-Berry, Scotty Shooter, and Alexander Gabriel, all on talking about the making of OFTD, which is super rad. We've been trying to get a bunch of these guys to show up here for quite a while. So it's going to be pretty exciting to have all their wisdom dropped on us and learn about the kind of process of creating this blend. So super excited. Catch us in a couple weeks there. Let's get everybody back to say goodbye. What's up, guys?
Little known fact, I went to high school with Aaron. Good to see you, my brother. Call you out.
Who was a better student?
He was.
She was. Monique always was very fashionable in high school. Like she was dressed to the nines every day. And in San Antonio, that was hard to do because it was always hot. So yeah.
I feel like that's totally your thing also.
Sports. I play sports. I could care less about my
Yes, you did.
Monique always had hairs done, hair did, and she was just doing her thing. So yeah.
That's amazing.
Glad to see
Who
you.
would have thought you guys would be together now on a live stream talking about tropical drinks? What are the odds of that?
It's very small world, man.
Gotta be
Very
small.
small world. Yeah.
Glad to hear it. Shannon, thank you so much. Enjoy New York. Enjoy the spring, guys. Always stoked to see everybody. Look forward to catching up with people IRL soon, hopefully.
Thank y'all.
There you go.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.